Caregiving can sometimes feel like an impossible struggle. Caregivers may be torn between taking care of loved ones and trying to maintain balance in life. The good news is that it doesn't have to be that way. The Caring Generation with host Pamela D. Wilson is here to focus on the conversation of caring. You're not alone. In fact, you're in exactly the right place to share stories and learn tips and resources to help you and your loved ones. So now, please welcome the host of The Caring Generation, Pamela D. Wilson.
I'm Pamela D. Wilson, caregiving expert, speaker, and consultant of the Caring Generation. Thank you for joining me for this week's show, episode 229, year 8. Topic of this show is caregiver counseling insights, how to get straight answers and support for elderly care. Are you a caregiver with more problems than answers? Have you spent hours on the internet searching for answers and really don't know any more than when you started? If so, stay with me for this week's episode that may help you consider a new option for solving caregiving problems that never seem to go away. Before jumping into this week's topic, please, if you find this podcast helpful, click the like or follow button on your podcast app and add a positive comment. Take a minute to do that for me. This will help the Caring Generation podcast grow in ratings and reach more listeners looking for caregiver solutions and strategies to care for elderly parents in the areas of health, finances, legal, family relationships, and family dynamics. In this episode, I'll share the differences between traditional counseling and caregiver counseling by sharing what caregiver counseling is and what it isn't. Then, I'll talk about topics that caregiving counseling can address so that you know if it might be helpful for you, your family members, and the person in your life who needs care. And last, I'll share a few tips that might motivate you to schedule a caregiver counseling session if you're in a complicated care situation or you want to confirm that you are making good and thoughtful decisions. Let's start by talking about traditional counseling and how it's very different from caregiver counseling. Traditional counseling or therapy can have this negative connotation because, in its true definition, it is psychologically focused mental health therapy. If you look in the dictionary, definitions include assistance and guidance in resolving personal, social, or psychological problems and difficulties. Understanding thoughts, feelings, and behaviors to find solutions and cope with challenges related to relationships and feelings. Statistics on counseling and therapy confirm that women are twice as likely to see a counselor as a man, with 1 in 4 women versus 1 in 7 men seeking counseling. And this is according to the CDC. Why do you think that is? Well, men are less likely to seek therapy because of society's expectations that men should just deal with their problems, or they believe that mental health concerns are a private matter. Now, when men do attend therapy, they're more likely to drop out or attend fewer sessions. So the focus of traditional counseling on emotions differs significantly from caregiver counseling that is usually focused on identifying and solving a problem that can cause emotional distress. But the goal is accepting responsibility for your role in a care situation and figuring out what to do next. Caregiver counseling focuses on identifying problems and solutions. And this makes caregiver counseling beneficial for men and women who want answers today, not over the course of 6 months or years like traditional counseling and therapy. Believe it or not, one virtual online meeting or a telephone call may be all you need to get started and on your way with a plan that you can put in place. So when you think about counseling, the type of counselor you choose depends on your needs. Do you need or want someone to hold your hand over a period of 6 months or a year or more, so that you can deal with all of the emotional issues from your childhood or your adulthood and figure out why things happened and how to resolve all of this? Or are you a caregiver who wants solutions to an immediate caregiving problem you have today, and you want to be able to talk to somebody who has been in your situation? The risk with traditional counselors or therapists is that you can be in counseling for a long time, and you can become so dependent on your therapist that you're afraid to stop seeing him or her. So instead of becoming more independent, you become more dependent. And this is a theme in caregiving. This is a theme for family caregivers who unintentionally, through their actions, through helping other people, make the people that they care for increasingly more dependent on the caregiver. And then the caregiver feels like they can never, ever leave the relationship. If you're in this situation, think about this. What have you done with the person that you care for? How have you helped them? And how does this relate to your feelings that you can't just walk away? If you make the person you care for more dependent on you, it's really counterproductive, meaning it is not something that you should want to do. And you do this, or caregivers do this, by trading time to care for people, taking time away from caring for yourself, not pursuing education or getting promoted at your job, doing things that you want. Caregiving by putting attention on your parents can harm your marriage and your relationships. It can also deprioritize all of your personal needs. So as a caregiver, your goal should be to build the independence and self-esteem of the person that you care for so that they can continue to live as independently as possible. You don't want to do things for an elderly parent or a spouse that they can still do for themselves, even if it takes them 10 times as long as you. Because if you do, then you will be doing these things forever. And the result of making people dependent on you is that as a caregiver, you become burned out, exhausted, impatient, frustrated, not a nice person. You forget who you were before caregiving, and if you give up a job or do something else significantly, sometimes you don't even realize how to get your life back. So, you have a choice. You can consult a mental health therapist to work through all of your emotional problems, and then have a caregiver session to find solutions to problems related directly to caregiving. To talk to a caregiver counselor who can give you the real story, the straight story, straight answers that you may not want to hear, and recommendations based on practical and proven experience. Caregiver counselors aren't waiting for you to figure out the answer. We help you with answers and options. Then you choose what step you take next. Now, obviously, you need to make sure that the caregiver counselor you choose has the experience you need. Book smarts without practical application do not work in so many situations. You need somebody who has lived experience. Caregiving counselors are a very small niche of the population because caregiving expertise, for it to be helpful, has to be personally gained. It's not something that you can learn from a book and then tell other people what to do and hope that it works out okay. It requires a range of personal experiences and professional experiences that develop into proven and practical experience. For example, I've worked in the caregiving industry for over 25 years. I've lived through the experiences of family caregivers personally and professionally. Both of my parents died over 25 years ago. I've lost a brother, a sister, all of my grandparents, aunts and uncles because I was the youngest in a family of 6 children. In my professional life, I've owned and built 3 companies, an in-home care agency, a care management and fiduciary agency where I was a court-appointed guardian, conservator, medical and financial power of attorney, and trustee responsible, legally responsible for the daily lives, well-being, and financial matters of many of my clients. This is very rare and unique experience. If you want to learn more about me, visit my website, PamelaDWilson.com. Click on the About tab, my name, Pamela D. Wilson, and then bio. There's also links below this video to my bio and how you can schedule a one-on-one caregiver consultation with me. So, while caregiver counseling does take into consideration emotions and feelings, because we all know that caregiving relationships are emotional, stressful, frustrating, because we're dealing with people's lives, caregiving counseling is intended to solve issues that are happening right now. It doesn't go back to issues when you were a child and your parents didn't give you what you wanted. Now, what I can say is that many caregivers who do too much can be seeking approval from a parent or want appreciation from a parent. Caregiver counseling does not solve these problems. It does not go into the psychology of your family and family relationships and how this happened. Therapists, psychologists, and psychiatrists work on that. On the other hand, if you're in an abusive caregiving situation where your health and well-being are suffering because you're doing so much work, my goal is to offer steps to motivate you to take practical steps to remove yourself from this potentially abusive situation that might be harming your health, your well-being, your career, family, and other parts of your life. I also talk to caregivers about abusive family care situations. So maybe your sibling or aunt or uncle is physically or emotionally abusing your parent, or maybe somebody else is. I help you work through those issues because those issues, believe it or not, elder abuse, it's a criminal act. It's prosecutable. It is a legal issue. So I have experience with that. I offer practical options and steps to help you motivate change so that you can motivate yourself to move ahead in your life and stop feeling that you're 100% responsible for meeting all the needs of another person. You deserve to live your own life and to be happy without feeling guilty about the choices that the person you care for made or did not make. In caregiver counseling, you can learn to recognize how your choices impact a care situation, and you can choose differently if it's not working out. Now, obviously, if a loved one has dementia, the choices are different. You may be the caregiver, but that does not mean that you have to be the caregiver 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and ruin your life. There are options there. So let's talk about topics that I address in my online virtual meetings or telephone caregiver counseling sessions. Again, there's a link in this podcast transcript with this information that you can read to this page on my website where you can complete a form if you want to schedule time with me. So, topics: evaluating a current situation, how to talk to loved ones who refuse help, how to discuss practical strategies to address health issues that seem to be getting worse, how to identify health issues, how to navigate care within the healthcare system, meaning working with doctors and hospitals and nursing homes and insurance companies, how to hire and manage in-home caregivers when you need them, how to coordinate care with multiple doctors or health systems, how to know when it's time to move an elderly parent out of their home, how to recognize memory loss and have memory loss evaluated so that you can make a dementia or an Alzheimer's care plan, how to oversee a loved one's care when they live in assisted living, memory care, or a nursing home. We talked about this one, how to identify abuse or neglect by a family member or a paid caregiving service, how to work with adult protective services, the police, and the elder justice or the criminal justice system, how to advocate for your needs and the person you care for, how to understand the legal aspects of power of attorney, guardianship, conservatorship, trustee, and If you have these responsibilities, what do they mean for you? How to plan for end-of-life care, how to talk about hospice, how to create more balance in your life as a caregiver, and even importantly, identify when you cannot be that caregiver anymore. And in other cases, if you have legal issues happening, how to work with an expert witness such as myself for litigation around family caregiving, abuse or neglect, power of attorney, guardianship, conservatorship issues, and anything else related to caregiving. Now let's turn to why caregivers can benefit from caregiver counseling. Sometimes having validation that you are being thoughtful about the decisions you're making can be helpful so that you're not second guessing yourself or you're not missing some important component of a decision that you didn't know about or that you didn't think about. Because as a caregiver, it is so easy not to know what you should know because there's so much to know. And if you've not had this experience before, how on earth could you expect yourself to know everything about the health, legal, and financial aspects of being responsible for caring for a loved one? Then there's all of the family dynamics and craziness and drama. Trying to deal with that can be a full-time job. Let's be honest. When caregivers become stuck, it's mostly because they accepted responsibility for another person. And now they're feeling like they don't know if they can do this anymore. It's hard. It's frustrating, exhausting. You can feel hopeless. You're thinking, how on earth did I get myself here? But the question that you want to be asking is, how can I change this situation so that I'm feeling happier and more engaged in my own life? I know there are all kinds of religious and cultural and family beliefs that tell you that spouses care for spouses and adult children should care for elderly parents until the end of time. This is not true when that relationship becomes harmful in either direction. When it becomes harmful to the caregiver's health, well-being, family life, career, and their ability to be self-sustaining and independent. When being the caregiver results in the person that you care for not getting the care they should because you are exhausted, or you don't know how to be the caregiver, or you just physically cannot do all these things, or the person you care for is isolated because they can't get out of the house and people aren't coming to visit them. Caregiving is a two-way street, and finding happiness in life requires that all of us move beyond what we think we should do, move beyond our comfort zones, and all of those comfortable routines that we find ourselves in that can just go on for years. Sometimes what we need is another person to show us what's possible, to encourage us, and to talk about possibilities. Caregivers, I know that you can change your lives by realizing that there's so much more out there than you can possibly imagine. If you seek information, ask for help, ask for advice from people who have the knowledge, the practical experience, and the wisdom to help you. If you do this, you can find the motivation to consider and create change in your life. So if fear or hesitation is holding you back, set these emotions aside so that you can move ahead and look at the true situation. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be happy. Why shouldn't you be happy? Why shouldn't your needs be met? Stop allowing all of these limitations in your life that you create in your mind to limit your possibilities. Find the courage to move ahead into the unknown. Each of us can have a tendency to limit ourselves because we limit our thinking. Don't let anybody else tell you what to do if it's not working out for you. Don't let the person you care for put a guilt trip on you, or your family members put a guilt trip on you. Let them have their own guilt themselves. Everything that we believe in life comes from a previous experience, and it can become a habit of ours. So it's important to learn how to recognize what we believe and why we believe it, so that maybe we can think differently, form new habits, change our lives. Being stubborn, stuck in a rut, thinking narrowly, thinking we versus they, limits potential. So when we can figure out what's blocking us from moving forward and remove that roadblock, we take one step into the future. The enemy of progress is everything that's going on upstairs in our minds. If we can convert negative thoughts into positives, we can change. Yesterday, it's gone. There is nothing that you can do about it. Today, tomorrow, it's a new day. We can all step forward on the path to a happier and a healthier and more prosperous life when we identify problems and look toward solutions, when we get help from people who can help us. I thank you all for joining me this week. I'm Pamela D. Wilson, caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker on the caring generation. This was episode 229. Please take a minute right now on your podcast app to click the like button, follow the show, and leave a positive comment if you found value in this episode, the tips and the strategies shared. If you're interested in looking at the show transcript and the video that accompanies this podcast episode, go to PamelaDWilson.com, click on the Media tab, select the Caring Generation, and scroll down to this episode. And while you're there, check out the over 200 other episodes answering questions that caregivers ask. I look forward to being with you again soon. God bless you all. Sleep well tonight. Have a fabulous day tomorrow, and enjoy each day until we are here together again.
Tune in each week for The Caring Generation with host Pamela D. Wilson. Come join the conversation and see how Pamela can provide solutions and peace of mind for everyone. Here on Pamela D. Wilson's The Caring Generation.